Every great love story begins with a spark, something small but powerful enough to ignite an entire journey. This spark is more than a glance across a crowded room or a quick rush of physical desire. It is the first opening, the invisible doorway through which two lives begin to sense each other. For a man, this spark signals the beginning of his inward journey through love's three stages: attraction and curiosity, emotional vulnerability, and finally commitment and decision. Understanding this first stage is essential because it is not just a beginning. It is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." This captures the essence of the first stage perfectly. Attraction is not simply a man being drawn to a woman. It is two energies colliding and creating a reaction neither fully expected. Something shifts in him, however subtly. He begins to see the world and himself through a slightly different lens. Beyond the surface, attraction as a multi-layered experience. It is easy to think of attraction as merely physical, but for men, it is far more nuanced. Yes, men are often visually oriented. The way a woman carries herself, her expressions, her style, and her energy all register almost instantly. But beyond that initial visual cue lies a richer, more complex reaction. Men are often pulled toward an energy they can't define. It may be the way she laughs at something unexpected, the quiet steadiness in her eyes, or the boldness of her opinions. It's an impression, a feeling, an intuition, something that suggests depth and difference. This explains why a man can be surrounded by attractive people yet feel captivated by one person in particular. He may not even be able to articulate why. That's because attraction, at its deepest level, is less about looks and more about resonance. Something about her resonates with an unspoken part of him, and this resonance triggers curiosity. Curiosity, the quiet engine behind desire. Curiosity is what takes attraction beyond a fleeting spark. It is the invisible force urging him to lean in, to pay attention, to want to know more. When a man experiences curiosity, his behavior subtly changes. He remembers small details, makes space in his life to cross paths with her, and begins small acts of attentiveness he might not even notice himself doing. Carl Jung observed, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." This applies to curiosity and love. As his interest grows, a man begins to reflect not only on who she is, but also on who he becomes around her. Does he feel more alive, more inspired, more daring? Her presence nudges him toward a deeper self-awareness. This self-awareness, in turn, fuels even more curiosity. The inner conflict, desire meets vulnerability. Attraction makes a man feel bold, but it also makes him feel exposed. Beneath the jokes, the confident gestures, or even the aloof exterior lies a man gauging risk. He is asking himself, how much should I reveal? How fast should I move? Should I risk rejection? This tension is often misunderstood as playing games, but more often than not, it's a genuine inner conflict between desire and self-protection. It is here that many of his behaviors, texting inconsistently, seeming eager one moment and distant the next, emerge. They're not deliberate manipulations, but signs of vulnerability. He feels something he doesn't yet fully understand. And while he is drawn toward her, he is also calibrating how much of himself to show. The subtle tests of stage 1. Even in the first stage, a man begins to collect data, though not always consciously. He notices how she treats others, how she handles stress, how she reacts when challenged. These observations aren't judgments. They're signals. They tell him whether his initial impression of her is accurate, whether the spark of attraction might lead to something deeper. Interestingly, this is also the stage where men often amplify their own presentation. He dresses better, pays more attention to his grooming, or steps into spaces where she might notice him. He may take risks to make her laugh or offer thoughtful gestures to show attentiveness. These behaviors are not simply about impressing her. They're about testing who he might be with her. how she might shape his own sense of self. Imagination and projection, the early fantasy. Another hidden aspect of stage 1 is imagination. In the quiet spaces of his mind, a man begins to imagine possibilities. What it would be like to share a conversation, a walk, a future moment. These images are not commitments, but prototypes of potential. They give emotional shape to his attraction, making it feel more real, more enticing. Carl Jung noted, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In stage 1, a man's unconscious projections are powerful. He begins to imagine qualities in her that may or may not be there, projecting his hopes, ideals, or unfulfilled needs onto her. This is not manipulation, but a natural psychological process. As he gets to know her better, these projections are tested against reality, leading either to disillusionment or deeper appreciation. Why this stage is fragile. Stage 1 feels exciting because it's new and alive, but it's also fragile. If the connection feels one-sided, rushed, or misunderstood, the spark can fade before it grows roots. A single moment of feeling dismissed, or a misunderstanding at this early stage, can slow or even stop the momentum. That's because at this point, his emotional investment is high, but his sense of safety is still low. He is attracted, curious, and hopeful, but also watchful. This is why subtle gestures matter so much at the beginning. A smile, a small expression of interest, or a gesture of warmth can deepen his curiosity. Conversely, a harsh word, a signal of indifference, or a dismissive tone can make him retreat. Men often remember these early signals long after the moment has passed, because they serve as anchors for their budding feelings. Men often find more meaning in what they must invest effort to achieve. This is not about playing hard to get, but about human psychology. Effort creates value. If a man feels he must earn a woman's trust, learn her world, and steadily show up, he often values the connection more deeply. When everything is given immediately without a chance to build, it can short-circuit curiosity. A small degree of mystery allows attraction to stretch, deepen, and stabilize. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This applies here as well. The tension, the small struggles, and the anticipation of stage 1 are not obstacles but the very elements that awaken deeper feelings. Without them, the connection risks remaining shallow or transactional. The quiet power of energy and presence. More than words or gestures. It's the energy between two people that shapes this stage. A woman's confidence, kindness, or authenticity can amplify a man's curiosity far more than any strategy or script. Men sense sincerity even before they can articulate it. When they feel genuine warmth and self-possession, it encourages them to lean closer. When they feel dissonance or hidden agendas, they instinctively hold back. This is where two inner worlds begin to overlap. Each interaction, no matter how small, leaves an imprint. Each glance, tone of voice, and act of attention creates either expansion or contraction in the budding connection. In this way, stage 1 is like a dance, playful yet profound, instinctual yet deeply psychological. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of stage 1 is that it doesn't only reveal who she is to him, it reveals who he is to himself. The people who captivate us often reflect something we're longing to integrate or explore. A man may find himself attracted to qualities he lacks or admires: courage, tenderness, mystery, or freedom. In seeking her, he is also seeking those qualities within himself. This is why the first stage is not trivial. It is a mirror. It is an invitation to growth. Carl Jung's insight captures this perfectly. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In the dance of attraction and curiosity, a man begins this very process, sensing that through knowing her, he might also know himself more fully. When seen this way, attraction and curiosity are not shallow beginnings but transformative seeds. They mark the point at which two lives begin to influence each other. However subtly, They carry within them the potential for a story neither person can yet imagine. But like any seed, they require careful tending. Without attention, patience, and authenticity, they may never grow beyond a fleeting moment. And so, the first stage of love is not merely about noticing someone. It's about opening a doorway to possibility, stepping toward an unknown future with equal parts excitement and hesitation. It's about the courage to let curiosity guide action and the patience to let action reveal truth. Most importantly, it's about recognizing that what feels like a simple attraction may actually be the first stirring of something profound. As the excitement of attraction and curiosity settles into a steadier rhythm, something subtle begins to stir within him. It's not as visible as the first spark, nor as decisive as the moment of commitment yet to come. This is the stage of emotional vulnerability, the hidden bridge between desire and devotion. It is here, in this quiet in-between, that the course of love is most often decided. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For a man moving into vulnerability, this saying is no abstraction. It is a daily, silent struggle. He is asking not only, do I love her? But also, will she still love me if she sees who I really am? This is the stage few people talk about, yet it's the most transformative. Why this stage is invisible. Unlike attraction, which bursts with visible signs, vulnerability is almost invisible. It rarely announces itself with dramatic gestures. Instead, it arrives in small hesitations, shifts in tone, or moments of withdrawal. He may still reach out but more tentatively. He may still appear confident, but his questions become softer. His humor a little sharper, his pauses a little longer. To an outside observer, or even to her, it may look like he's losing interest. But in reality, it's often the opposite. He's interested enough to risk being seen, but frightened enough to second-guess every step. The conditioning he's unlearning. For many men, vulnerability is a skill they were never taught. From boyhood, society encourages strength, self-reliance, and emotional control. Weakness is often ridiculed. Softness is questioned. By adulthood, these lessons have hardened into an internal armor. Behind it may live a rich emotional world. Fears, hopes, insecurities. But that world is rarely revealed. When he starts to feel something real for someone, the armor doesn't disappear overnight. Instead, it cracks in small places. He might tell her a story about his childhood that carries pain. He might reveal a mistake that still embarrasses him. He might go quiet during stress rather than perform strength he doesn't feel. Each of these is a tentative experiment. Will she meet me here? Will she accept this? Micro-tests of safety. This stage is filled with micro-tests, though not the manipulative kind. They're more like small checks on reality. He shares a little piece of himself and waits for her response. If she meets it with empathy, patience, or even simple presence, a new door opens. If she meets it with judgment or dismissal, the door slams shut. He might admit a fear about the future, mention a time he felt ashamed, become uncharacteristically quiet, react more sensitively to criticism. Each is a soft bid for reassurance. Each is his way of saying without words, I'm lowering the drawbridge. Are you safe to let in? Why silence is often vulnerability. Many women expect vulnerability to look like words. But for men, silence is often the first language of vulnerability. When he retreats, it may not mean he doesn't care. It may mean he's overwhelmed by the risk of exposure. His I'm fine could actually mean, I'm terrified you won't like the real me. Carl Jung remarked, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. In this stage, a man begins to look inward. His silence is not emptiness but the sound of awakening. He is listening to himself, grappling with fears, and deciding how much of his inner world to share. The tug of war between fear and hope. Stage 2 is an emotional tug of war. On one side is fear, memories of being rejected, criticized, or mocked in moments of openness. On the other is hope, the growing sense that maybe she is different, maybe she can be trusted. He oscillates between leaning in and pulling back. This inconsistency confuses many women, but for him it is evidence gathering, testing the bridge before crossing it fully. This is also the stage where men feel most conflicted about control. They're used to steering their emotions, keeping their composure, but vulnerability demands surrender, and surrender feels dangerous. What he's really asking, beneath all his behaviors, the real question he's asking is simple. Can I be myself here? Not the version he shows to colleagues, friends, or even family, but the real self, complete with insecurities, failures, and dreams he's never spoken aloud. If the answer feels like yes, something monumental shifts. If it feels like no, he pulls back, sometimes permanently. Why this stage creates so much confusion? Because men rarely verbalize their needs in stage 2. Women often misinterpret what's happening. They might think, he's losing interest, he's playing games, he's immature or afraid of commitment. In reality, he may be most interested at this stage. He's just also most afraid. The paradox of vulnerability is that the closer he feels, the scarier it becomes to show himself. This is why so many promising connections stall right here. Not because attraction faded, but because safety never solidified. How she can nurture safety without losing herself. It's important to note that nurturing safety does not mean mothering, fixing, or sacrificing one's own boundaries. It simply means responding with steadiness and empathy to his small bids for trust. Some examples. If he admits a failure, don't minimize it but acknowledge it as human. If he withdraws briefly, offer presence without pressure. If he shares a dream or fear, treat it with respect, not ridicule. This does not require overgiving or abandoning self-respect. In fact, authenticity and clear boundaries increase his trust. What matters is the tone. Non-judgmental, patient, and genuinely interested, rather than interrogative or dismissive. Why empathy matters more than answers. When he reveals something vulnerable, he's not usually asking for a solution. He's asking for a witness. He wants to know that his inner world matters, that someone can sit with it without rushing to fix it. This mirrors Jung's insight. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. To meet his vulnerability well, she too must be comfortable with her own imperfections. The slow opening of the heart. If safety develops, something extraordinary happens. His words become freer. His body relaxes around her. He begins to share unprompted, to trust his feelings enough to express them. Small signs of care, eye contact, gentle teasing, spontaneous affection become more authentic. These are not performances anymore. They're expressions of a real bond forming. It is during this stage that a man begins to see a woman not only as someone he desires, but as someone he can rely on emotionally. That realization marks the beginning of true intimacy. Attraction brought him close. Vulnerability brings him inside. Why this stage is so transformative for him. Stage 2 isn't only about testing her. It's about transforming him. For perhaps the first time, he's confronting the walls he built long ago. If she responds with steadiness, he learns that intimacy doesn't equal danger, that softness can coexist with strength. This rewires not only how he loves her, but how he loves himself. And because this transformation is internal, it changes how he shows up in every part of his life. A man who feels safe in vulnerability becomes more creative, more empathetic, and more grounded. He begins to inhabit his full self. The cost of missing this stage. When stage 2 is mishandled or ignored, the impact can be lasting. A man who feels unsafe emotionally may stay in the relationship but keep his heart locked away. He may appear present but remain guarded, offering affection but never full devotion. Over time, this leaves both partners frustrated. She senses his distance. He resents his own inability to open. This is why so many relationships that begin with strong attraction fade into lukewarm companionship. They never built the bridge. They never crossed the threshold of vulnerability. A turning point. When he finally feels safe, there's a moment, sometimes imperceptible, when his internal posture changes. His shoulders relax, his gaze softens, his words deepen. He starts speaking about we instead of I. He stops gauging whether he should open up and starts asking how they can grow together. This turning point leads directly to the next stage, commitment and decision. But he cannot skip vulnerability to get there. Attraction without vulnerability is a fling. Vulnerability without commitment is limbo. Only by crossing this hidden bridge can he reach the clarity he needs to truly choose, becoming the space where love can land. Ultimately, stage 2 asks both partners to grow. It's not only about him feeling safe, it's also about her practicing empathy, patience, and discernment. Together they create a climate where love can deepen beyond infatuation. Carl Jung summed this up in another way. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. In vulnerability, both partners are transformed, not just in how they see each other, but in how they see themselves. After the spark of attraction and the hidden bridge of vulnerability, a quiet clarity begins to emerge. Something has shifted inside him. He has moved from curiosity to closeness, from risk to trust. Now he stands at the threshold of choice, the stage of commitment and decision. This stage is not just about saying yes to someone else. It is also about saying yes to a version of himself that exists only within partnership. Carl Jung once wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." This saying captures the essence of stage 3. Having moved through attraction and vulnerability, a man must now make a conscious decision about who he wants to be in this relationship and in his life. The days of drifting on instinct are over. Commitment is a choice, not a reaction. Why this stage feels different. Commitment does not feel like the first rush of infatuation or the soft trembling of vulnerability. It feels steadier, heavier, and more deliberate. A man at this stage begins to weigh his life in a larger frame. He asks himself, do our values align? Can I see a future with her? Am I ready to build rather than just experience? Who am I willing to become in this partnership? These questions don't always appear as words. They may appear as a need to slow down, to talk about the future, to reevaluate priorities, or even to retreat briefly to think. This is not necessarily ambivalence. It is a man shifting from feeling to deciding, the subtle shift from me to we. As commitment approaches, his internal language changes. He no longer imagines weekends only for himself, but begins to include her automatically. He may introduce her to his closest friends or family. He may start making plans months in advance. These are not random acts. They are expressions of a deepening identity. He is no longer just a man dating. He is a man building. This shift from me to we also shows up in micro choices. Consulting her about decisions, considering her feelings before making plans, or caring about how his life choices affect her. Each small choice is a vote for the relationship as a shared entity, not just a personal experience. The weight of responsibility. The third stage brings with it a new awareness of responsibility. Up until now, attraction and vulnerability have been primarily about personal experience, how she makes him feel, how safe he feels with her. Commitment flips the focus outward. How will his choices impact her? What kind of partner does he want to be? For many men, this is both exhilarating and intimidating. It is no longer enough to simply like her or feel close to her. He is now considering promises, reliability, and shared futures. This stage activates a deeper sense of integrity. He begins to test himself. Am I ready to show up consistently? Am I willing to keep showing up even when it's hard? Why commitment requires clarity. A man cannot commit fully if he is still confused about who he is or what he wants. That's why the earlier stages matter so much. Attraction shows him possibility. Vulnerability shows him safety. Only when both are present can he reach clarity about his decision. This clarity is rarely sudden. It often arrives slowly, like dawn breaking over a horizon. One day he realizes he hasn't checked dating apps in weeks. Another day he realizes he's been picturing her in his future plans without effort. These realizations accumulate until he feels sure enough to decide. Decision is an act of courage. Commitment is often described as settling down, but in reality it's an act of courage. It's saying, I am willing to intertwine my life with yours. I am willing to risk loss, disappointment, and change because I believe in what we can build. This is no small feat. It requires him to release old habits, old defenses, and sometimes old freedoms. Carl Jung once observed, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By stage 3, a man has confronted enough of his unconscious fears to choose consciously. This is why genuine commitment feels different from infatuation. It's not just emotional. It's volitional. Signs he's entering stage 3. Some signs a man is moving into commitment and decision include future orientation, talking about next year, long-term plans, or shared goals. Integration, introducing her to his inner circle, blending social groups. Stability, more consistent communication and behavior. Investment, willingness to discuss finances, living arrangements, or shared responsibilities. Transparency, openness about fears, dreams, and plans without prompting. These behaviors reflect a psychological pivot. He is no longer only seeking, he is building. The risk of regression. Stage 3 is not guaranteed. If trust is shaken, or if fundamental incompatibilities surface, he may regress to earlier stages. He may withdraw to reevaluate or even exit the relationship. This is not necessarily a failure. It's a natural self-correction. Commitment without compatibility leads to resentment. Decision without clarity leads to instability. How he experiences love now. Attraction was electric. Vulnerability was tender. Commitment feels grounded. In this stage, love shifts from a feeling to a practice. It becomes the daily act of showing up, of weaving two lives together. He no longer measures love only by intensity, but also by reliability, respect, and shared growth. This is where intimacy deepens into interdependence. He begins to experience the quiet joy of partnership, the stability of knowing someone is there, the trust of shared plans, the comfort of mutual understanding. It's less cinematic but more real. The challenge of freedom. One of the hardest aspects of stage 3 for men is balancing freedom and partnership. He wants to commit without feeling imprisoned. He wants to share a life without losing himself. This tension is healthy. In fact, couples who thrive in this stage respect individuality as much as togetherness. They understand that love is not ownership but partnership. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In the context of commitment, this means that the best relationships are not those that consume individuality but those that support it. A man who feels he can still grow, explore, and express himself within the relationship is far more likely to commit deeply and stay devoted. Shared vision and co-creation. At this stage, he's no longer just choosing her. He's choosing a shared life. This requires conversation, negotiation, and imagination. Together they start building a vision. Where do we live? How do we handle money? What do we want in 5 years? How do we support each other's goals? These conversations may feel mundane compared to the passion of stage 1 or the intimacy of stage 2, but they are the architecture of real partnership. Without them, commitment stays symbolic. With them, it becomes lived reality. Why this stage is sacred. Stage 3 is sacred because it transforms two lives into something larger than either individual. It is not the end of romance, but the deepening of it. Attraction and vulnerability create a bond. Commitment creates a home, an emotional and sometimes literal home where both can grow. This stage is also where love becomes resilient. Couples who have built trust and practiced vulnerability can weather conflict, disappointment, and change far better than those who skip these steps. Commitment does not remove challenges, but it gives both partners the tools to meet them together. When a man commits, he's not only saying yes to her, he's saying yes to a future they will co-create. This is why commitment feels so significant for him. It's not just a status change, it's an existential shift. He is choosing a new identity, partner, builder, co-creator. And in choosing, he becomes freer. Because when decision is conscious, it's not a cage, it's a foundation. It liberates energy once spent on doubt and scattering and channels it into growth, stability, and shared dreams. Love as an ongoing practice. Even in stage 3, the journey doesn't end. Attraction still needs tending. Vulnerability still needs nurturing. Commitment is not a one-time choice, but a daily renewal. Each day, in small ways, he chooses to show up. He chooses honesty over hiding, care over indifference, growth over stagnation. Carl Jung's insight about individuation, the process of becoming whole, applies here. A healthy partnership is not two halves completing each other, but two wholes walking together. Commitment at its best is not dependency but mutual evolution. The transformation across all 3 stages. Looking back, the 3 stages form a coherent arc. 1. Attraction and curiosity, the spark. The first doorway, the energetic pull. 2. Emotional vulnerability, the hidden bridge, the testing ground of trust. 3. Commitment and decision, the threshold of choice, the conscious act of building a life. Each stage contains its own risks and gifts. Each prepares the ground for the next. Skipping one weakens the whole structure. Honoring each creates a love that can endure. The journey continues. By reaching stage 3, a man doesn't become perfect or finished. Instead, he becomes ready. Ready to practice love as a verb. Ready to hold space for another person. Ready to let himself be shaped and reshaped by intimacy. In this way, the 3 stages are not just a roadmap to love, but a roadmap to maturity. Carl Jung's words echo across the entire journey. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Through attraction, vulnerability, and commitment, a man chooses, again and again, who he will become in love. And in that choosing, he discovers that love is not only about finding someone else, it's also about finding himself. When a man has crossed the invisible threshold from hesitation to commitment, the emotional landscape changes yet again. Attraction ignited his interest. Vulnerability tested his courage. Commitment anchored his choice. But what comes next is not simply coasting on certainty. It is the stage where love matures from a spark into a steady flame, where partnership begins to shape who each person becomes. Carl Jung once observed, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." This is exactly what unfolds after a man chooses to stay. The relationship ceases to be merely about 2 separate individuals interacting. It becomes a living system, a shared identity that subtly transforms each partner's inner world. For men especially, this transformation can be profound because it allows aspects of themselves they have long hidden, their softer instincts, their nurturance, their longing for connection, to emerge without fear, from choice to daily practice. Attraction and vulnerability are experiences. Commitment is a decision. But the phase that follows is about practice. The small daily actions that sustain and deepen intimacy. In this stage, a man moves from proving himself to being himself. The pressure to impress fades, replaced by the desire to build. He begins to show his habits, his quirks, his less curated self. He no longer acts primarily to win her affection, but to grow their shared life. This stage is sometimes mistaken for routine, yet it is actually the soil where deep roots take hold. It is also where true emotional reciprocity blossoms. During the earlier stages, much of the emotional energy flows from him toward her. The pursuit, the testing, the disclosure. Now he starts to notice her vulnerabilities more keenly, and he feels a responsibility to meet them with the same steadiness he once hoped to receive. The dance of give and take becomes more symmetrical. Trust deepens, not through grand gestures but through consistent presence. Intimacy beyond romance. For many men, this is the first time they experience intimacy as more than passion. Sexual attraction remains important, but it becomes woven into a tapestry of shared experiences. Quiet mornings, mundane errands, long conversations at night. The bond shifts from excitement to significance. He begins to see her not only as a partner, but as a mirror, a sounding board, a co-creator of meaning in his life. Jung's insight resonates again here. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In a healthy partnership, a man feels freer to explore and express his authentic self. Her presence doesn't constrain him, it supports him. He may discover new interests, rekindle forgotten passions, or become more patient, empathetic, or ambitious than before. The relationship becomes a container for personal growth, not a cage. Negotiating identity and togetherness. Yet this stage also carries challenges. After the thrill of commitment, both partners confront the practicalities of blending two lives. Differences in lifestyle, values, and communication styles become more apparent. The fantasy of effortless harmony meets the reality of daily compromise. Man who has chosen commitment must now learn how to balance individuality with unity, how to stay himself while becoming an us. Here, patience and self-awareness are essential. Without them, couples risk falling into power struggles or silent resentments. With them, differences become opportunities for growth. He learns to articulate his needs without defensiveness, to listen without judgment, and to negotiate boundaries with respect. She learns the same. This mutual skill building turns potential conflicts into bridges rather than walls. The expansion of care. In the previous stages, love was largely about the dyad, just him and her. But as commitment solidifies, a man often begins to widen his circle of care. He introduces her to family and friends not only out of pride, but as a sign that she is now part of his social and emotional ecosystem. He also starts planning longer-term goals that include her, a home, travel, financial decisions, or creative projects. This expansion is not only logistical but psychological. When he imagines his future, she is there. When he makes decisions, he accounts for her dreams alongside his own. The sense of partnership extends beyond the couple into how they show up in the world, supporting each other's careers, passions, and personal missions. Love as a shared purpose. One of Jung's most striking statements was, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this stage, partners begin to uncover the unconscious patterns that drive their love. They recognize how past wounds shape current behaviors, how family histories influence expectations, and how unspoken fears can erode intimacy. By bringing these patterns to light together, they shift from being passive passengers of fate to co-authors of their relationship's future. This work can be uncomfortable. It means admitting vulnerabilities, apologizing for mistakes, and forgiving imperfections, not once but repeatedly. But it also forges resilience. Couples who learn to do this create a deeper sense of safety than any amount of initial attraction can provide. The emergence of true friendship. As passion stabilizes, friendship becomes more visible. This doesn't diminish romantic love, it enriches it. True friendship means enjoying each other's company without constant stimulation, being able to sit in silence, or support each other through dull or difficult days. For many men, realizing that their partner is also their friend is a revelation. It dismantles stereotypes that intimacy must always be dramatic or sexual. Instead, it affirms that the quiet companionship of everyday life is a form of intimacy all its own. The role of shadow and growth. Jung spoke often of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide or deny. In relationships, shadows inevitably surface. In this post-commitment stage, a man may encounter aspects of himself he doesn't like. Jealousy, insecurity, impatience triggered by closeness. Rather than signaling failure, this is a chance for growth. With support, he can integrate these shadow parts instead of projecting them onto his partner. As Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Couples who understand This don't panic when conflict arises. They see it as an invitation to understand themselves and each other more deeply. This attitude turns disagreements into laboratories for self-awareness and mutual compassion, building rituals of connection. Deep love thrives on small rituals, shared meals, inside jokes, evening walks, affectionate gestures. These rituals are deceptively powerful because they create predictability and meaning. For a man, engaging in them shifts his sense of time. Love is no longer about isolated moments, but about ongoing continuity. These habits become emotional home bases that sustain the relationship during stress or distance. Partnership is a mirror of the self. At this stage, he begins to recognize that loving another person is also a way of loving himself. Seeing her grow gives him pride. Supporting her dreams gives his life dimension. Her acceptance of his flaws softens his self-criticism. In turn, his acceptance of her imperfections strengthens his empathy. Each learns from the other's inner world. This reciprocal reflection turns the relationship into an ongoing dialogue of becoming. Jung captured this paradox beautifully. The meeting with oneself is, at first, the meeting with one's own shadow, but then the meeting with one's own soul. In loving her more deeply, he encounters more of himself. Not only the shadow, but also the soul. Weathering the first storms. No deep bond exists without challenges. Life stress, career shifts, health issues, or family conflicts can test even the strongest partnerships. Yet these tests are also opportunities to demonstrate resilience. When a man stays present during difficulties, not as a hero, but as a partner, he discovers a deeper layer of his own strength. When she does the same, trust solidifies further. Each trial they face and survive together becomes a thread in the tapestry of their shared story, preparing the ground for lifelong love. This fourth stage, deepening intimacy and building shared identity, is not about reaching a finish line. It is about creating a foundation strong enough to support a lifetime of evolution. As both partners grow, their needs, desires, and dreams will change. The bond they build now will allow them to adapt together instead of drifting apart. The beauty of this stage is that it moves beyond the binary of falling in love or being in love. It is about growing in love, a process that is active, dynamic, and creative. It's where love stops being only an emotion and becomes a practice, a skill and an art. After attraction, vulnerability, commitment, and the deepening of intimacy comes a quieter but no less powerful stage, sustaining and renewing love over the long term. Many think of this as the end of a journey, but it is really the start of a lifelong practice, learning how to stay connected while allowing both people to grow, change, and express themselves fully. Carl Jung wrote, "We are not what happened to us, we are what we choose to become." This applies equally to relationships. Two people who have chosen each other are not bound to repeat old patterns. They can consciously create a partnership that evolves with them, one that honors individuality while nurturing a shared life. Love as an ongoing choice. Even after years together, love does not run on autopilot. A man must still choose his partner daily. Not in the anxious, testing way of the early stages, but with quiet intentionality. This means showing up with curiosity, empathy, and a willingness to see her anew, rather than assuming he already knows everything about her. In the early days, his attention was fueled by novelty. In the mature stage, it is fueled by devotion. Paradoxically, this makes the relationship more alive because both partners remain open to surprise, growth, and rediscovery, protecting space for individuality. A common trap in long-term relationships is fusion, the slow erasure of individuality in the name of togetherness. Sustaining love requires a balance between connection and independence. Jung's view of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming one's unique self, offers a model. Each partner must continue to cultivate their own interests, friendships, and inner life, while also investing in their shared identity. This is not selfishness. It is nourishment. When a man maintains a vibrant inner world, he brings new energy back into the partnership. When she does the same, she brings fresh perspective. This cross-pollination keeps the relationship dynamic rather than static. Periodic renewal. Long-term love benefits from intentional renewal, rituals or practices that refresh the connection. This can be as simple as taking a weekend trip together, revisiting early memories, learning a new skill as a couple, or even just asking deeper questions at dinner. Renewal acts like pruning a tree. It clears away the dead branches and allows new growth to emerge. Jung captured the spirit of this when he said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." Play, novelty, and creativity keep the relationship alive, navigating life's changes together. Over decades, partners will face health changes, family dynamics, career shifts, aging and loss. The ability to navigate these transitions gracefully depends less on having no conflict and more on the resilience built in earlier stages of the trust, communication, and shared meaning that allow them to weather storms together. When a man commits to being not just a lover but also an ally in his partner's evolution, he helps create a foundation of security from which both can take risks and grow. The relationship becomes a source of courage rather than constraint. Embracing the shadow over time. Even in mature love, the shadow does not disappear. Old wounds may resurface in new forms, but by now both partners have learned to see these episodes as invitations to deeper understanding rather than as threats. They can talk openly about triggers, apologize with sincerity, and forgive with grace. Jung's insight applies here too. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. A man who has done his own inner work can meet his partner's pain with compassion instead of defensiveness. Together they create a safe container for healing. From passion to companionship to legacy. Over time, the meaning of love broadens. Physical attraction remains, but companionship and legacy grow more prominent. Couples may begin mentoring younger people, contributing to their community, or building projects that outlast them. Their love becomes not just about personal happiness, but about a shared contribution to the world. This expansion echoes Jung's idea of the self, a larger, more integrated sense of being. Love becomes less about satisfying immediate needs and more about participating in something transcendent. The power of storytelling. Every couple builds a private mythology, the story of how they met, what they've overcome, what they stand for. This story is not trivial. It's the glue that binds them. Retelling it over time, adding new chapters, helps reinforce their shared identity. A man who understands this can consciously shape the narrative. Instead of seeing challenges as proof of incompatibility, he frames them as part of their hero's journey together. This mindset creates resilience and pride rather than bitterness, respecting cycles of distance and closeness. Even the healthiest couples experience natural cycles of closeness and distance. Work stress, personal growth spurts, or family obligations can temporarily shift focus. The key is to interpret these fluctuations, not as rejection but as normal breathing, patterns of a long-term bond. After all, oxygen flows in and out. So does intimacy. Allowing space without panic actually strengthens trust. When partners reunite, the relationship feels refreshed. This is another way of practicing the individuation that Jung saw as essential to wholeness, aging gracefully together. In later years, bodies change and roles shift. Physical vitality may wane, but emotional intimacy can deepen beyond anything possible in youth. The shared history of decades creates a richness of understanding and unspoken language. At this stage, affection and appreciation become even more vital. Small gestures, a hand squeeze, a kind word, a shared laugh carry immense weight. Jung noted, "The afternoon of life is just as full of meaning as the morning, only its meaning and purpose are different." Long-term, love thrives when partners embrace this shift, rather than resisting it. a living, breathing partnership. Ultimately, sustaining lifelong love is about treating the relationship as a living organism, something that needs nourishment, rest, and occasional reinvention. It's about recognizing that growth does not end, and neither does the opportunity to rediscover each other. When a man reaches this stage, he has moved from conquest to stewardship, from proving himself to co-creating a life. He is no longer trying to win love, but to live love, daily, imperfectly, beautifully.